The charges unsealed today are just one part of our effort to target every aspect of Hamas's operations.
Tonight, in a stunning move, the U.S. Department of Justice has filed criminal charges against Hamas's top leaders over murdered Americans, including the October 7th attacks. The charges range from conspiracy to murder U.S. nationals to financing terrorism.
They murdered entire families. They murdered the elderly, and they murdered young children.
The CBS Evening News starts now. Good evening, I'm Maurice Dubois in Tonight for Nora, and we begin with breaking news. Newly announced criminal charges against 6 senior leaders of Hamas in the deaths of dozens of Americans in the October 7th terror attack. These charges come just days after more hostages were executed, including American Hersh Goldberg, Poland, adding new intense pressure to accelerate ceasefire talks. And one of the defendants now facing federal charges is a key decision maker in those negotiations. CBS's Scott MacFarlane has details tonight from the Justice Department.
Nearly 11 months after the deadly attack by Hamas, federal prosecutors have announced criminal charges against a series of senior leaders of Hamas for the deaths of at least 43 American citizens who were among the approximately 1,200 people killed October 7th.
This weekend, we learned that Hamas murdered 6 more hostages, including Hersh Goldberg, Poland, a 23-year-old Israeli American. We are investigating Hersh's murder and each and every one of the brutal murders of Americans as acts of terrorism.
Hersh Goldberg, Poland's mother, spoke about the horrors of his abduction.
We became absolutely certain that you were coming home to us alive, but it was not to be. Now I no longer have to worry about you. I know you are no longer in danger.
The Justice Department says Yahya Sinwar and a group of other senior Hamas figures financed, directed, and oversaw a campaign to murder U.S. citizens and endanger U.S. national security. And they allege it was this group that orchestrated the killings and kidnappings. The group includes key figures in Hamas's political and military leadership. Some of the group are dead. None has been captured, but prosecutors say it's critical to hold all responsible accountable.
The case was first filed in February, but just unsealed after the death of one of the defendants. But this case will remain in limbo, Maurice, unless and until the other defendants are captured and brought here to the U.S.
Scott MacFarlane at the Justice Department tonight. Thank you. Meanwhile, demonstrators in Israel took to the streets again tonight as Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu pushes back against pressure to reach a ceasefire deal. CBS's Imtiaz Tayeb reports from Tel Aviv.
It was a third night of anguish and anger as thousands of Israelis filled the streets of Tel Aviv.
These protesters say that they're going to keep demonstrating until Prime Minister Netanyahu agrees to a ceasefire and hostage release deal with Hamas. But so far, Netanyahu remains stubbornly defiant.
The man is a liar, compulsive liar, he's a crook and a liar, and he's a criminal.
When Netanyahu spoke to the nation, he said he would not give in to pressure and devoted much of his address to a map display of the Philadelphia corridor, a narrow strip of land along Gaza's southern border with Egypt, he says is used by Hamas to smuggle weapons and is a threat to Israelis. An allegation that Yair Lapid, the leader of the opposition, blasted as a trick by Netanyahu to hold his extreme far-right coalition government together. A sentiment shared by Israel's defense minister and head of the military, with both saying the Philadelphia corridor does not pose an existential threat that should get in the way of a hostage deal. But until Netanyahu changes his mind, around 100 hostages will remain in Hamas captivity. And the war on Gaza will rage on. At least 8 Palestinians were killed in the northern Jabalia refugee camp as they waited to buy bread.
And after months of failed ceasefire talks, the Biden administration says it's developing a new hostage deal proposal that may be a take-it-or-leave-it offer to both Hamas and Prime Minister Netanyahu, who Israelis continue to accuse of not wanting a deal for his own political gain. Maurice.
Imtiaz Tayyab in Tel Aviv tonight. Thank you. Back in this country, Election Day now 9 weeks away, and the post-Labor Day sprint is on. Top of mind for both candidates, the economy. Vice President Harris and former President Trump are set to tout dueling economic plans this week as a recent CBS Battleground tracker shows just how tight the race is in the 7 states that could decide the race. Here's CBS's Robert Costa.
The final sprint toward Election Day has begun.
Are you ready to make your voices heard?
Get the hell out to vote.
Both campaigns are laser focused on next Tuesday's debate in Philadelphia, a crucial moment that could shake up a close race. CBS News Battleground analysis shows every key swing state very tight. And with mail ballots going out to voters as soon as Friday and early in-person voting starting September 20th, the debate could have an outsized impact.
I look forward to the debate with her.
Meanwhile, some Trump allies see little political upside in his barrage of personal attacks.
She's a defective person. And we don't need another defective person as president of the United States.
South Carolina Republican Lindsey Graham arguing in today's New York Times that Trump needs to focus on policy, not barbs.
When unions are strong, America is strong.
Vice President Harris and her running mate Tim Walz have been hitting a populist note as they court working voters and cast Trump as an ally of big business, releasing a new ad in battleground states today.
Trump is focused on giving them tax cuts, but Kamala Harris is focused on you.
Trump is pushing to extend the tax cuts he and Republicans enacted years ago, and will deliver a speech Thursday in New York about his plans. Meanwhile, the campaign soundtrack today got a scratch after a judge blocked Trump from using Hold On, I'm Comin', the soul hit co-written by the late Isaac Hayes, following legal pressure from Hayes' family.
The battle over music pales in comparison to the battle over the economy. Today, Harris unveiled her own economic ideas, pushing for federal tax incentives for small businesses. That includes a tenfold increase in the deduction for startup expenses, going from $5,000 to $50,000. Maurice.
It is on now. Robert Costa in Washington tonight. Thank you. FBI agents today arrested a former top aide to New York's Governor Kathy Hochul, accusing the former aide, of acting as a foreign agent for China in exchange for millions of dollars. Prosecutors say she acted in the interests of China and blocked representatives of the Taiwanese government from having access to high-level officials in New York. She and her husband have pleaded not guilty to the charges. Now to the war in Ukraine, where Russian forces are escalating their attacks with hundreds of missile and drone strikes raining down across the country overnight. The deadliest attack taking place in the central city of Poltava, where at least 51 people were killed and more than 200 others wounded. CBS's Ian Lee has reported from Ukraine's front lines over the last month and has the latest tonight.
Cadets were gathering at this military academy Tuesday morning when 2 Russian ballistic missiles hit. There was little time between the air raid siren and explosions for people to take cover. The strike killed dozens, injured hundreds more, and left many trapped under the rubble. This soldier called home, letting his family know he's alive. Russia has stepped up its bombardment of Ukraine in recent days. More than 300 strikes in the last 24 hours alone. Artillery destroyed this hotel in Zaporizhia, killing a 38-year-old woman and her 8-year-old son. While a missile slammed into a shopping center in Kharkiv, another hitting an apartment building and a nearby playground. A frustrated Ukrainian president demanded the world send help. Air defense systems and missiles are needed in Ukraine, not in a warehouse somewhere, he said. Long-range strikes that can defend against Russian terror are needed now. Ukraine is holding ground in Russia's Kursk region, and it has advanced weapons to hit critical targets deeper into the country, including the bases housing the jets launching the missiles. But Western countries who have donated them, including the U.S., are saying no, fearing Russia's reaction. So Ukraine's left with its own long-range drones. Over the weekend, Kyiv managed to hit a power plant and oil refinery in Moscow, on President Vladimir Putin's doorstep. And tonight, National Security Council spokesman John Kirby said the attack in Poltava was another horrific reminder of Putin's brutality, adding the U.S. will send more military aid to Ukraine in the coming weeks. Maurice?
Ian Lee in London tonight, thank you. An extreme heat dome on the West Coast is putting 40 million Americans under alert tonight, from Oregon down to Arizona. Today, Phoenix hit a record 100th straight day of triple-digit temperatures. CBS Bay Area Chief Meteorologist Paul Hagan joins us tonight with more. Good evening, Paul.
Maurice, good evening. Summer just refuses to loosen its grip on the western United States after the hottest summer on record in both Phoenix and Las Vegas. Tomorrow, another day of temperatures significantly exceeding 100 degrees. And that heat is going to extend through the Central Valley of California and even into the Pacific Northwest. Portland getting up to 97 degrees for a high temperature tomorrow. And the heat in Portland is actually going to peak on Thursday at 102. That's remarkable because downtown Portland has only exceeded 100 degrees in the month of September 3 times since 1874. We're talking about 150 years of data. This is a pattern that has repeated itself over and over again this summer. That heat dome, a strong area of high pressure in the upper levels of the atmosphere, a mountain of air compressing the air at ground level, which heats it up to such a great degree. So tomorrow is yet another day of widespread excessive heat warnings and heat advisories for the western United States. Now, of course, on the other side of the country, it's the other side of the weather seesaw. Temperatures are going to be running several degrees below average on Wednesday. Enjoy that while it lasts, Maurice, because summer is not done with us yet.
It is not. Paul Hagan, thank you. Now to a slow-moving disaster. California's Governor Gavin Newsom has just declared a state of emergency for the city of Rancho Palos Verdes, about 30 miles south of Los Angeles, due to a landslide that is threatening homes. Evacuation warnings are in effect for about 140 homes, and electricity has been cut off indefinitely for others due to safety concerns. CBS's Jonathan Vigliotti is there tonight.
We have no power, no water in there now.
81-year-old Sally Reeves is watching her Rancho Palos Verdes home crumble to pieces.
The stairway was coming away from the wall.
For more than 6 months now, every room in the house she's lived in for 42 years has fallen apart as the landslides get worse.
This is what it did to our bedroom.
So this was where our bed would normally be.
Our bed was right here.
And this is the cracking from this landslide.
Yes.
Now the power company, Southern California Edison, has cut off electricity to Reeves and hundreds of her neighbors, citing fire concerns. Homes across this hillside community are experiencing cracked walls and shifting foundations, all caused by centuries-old underground landslides that are creating sinkholes at the surface. One landslide that was recently discovered is as much as 345 feet below ground and moving fast. Back-to-back years of extreme rainfall have only accelerated land movement, as much as 50 feet annually.
There's no playbook for this.
Local officials pressured California's governor to declare a state of emergency. They say it will take billions of dollars to rebuild.
I hope that we can find some long-term solution geologically, but until that time comes, it's only going to get worse.
Sally Reeves is staying put.
We worked hard to be here, and we're here, and we love it here.
So you're not going anywhere.
We're not going anywhere.
And others have no option but to leave. This home has sunk more than 10 feet. The entrance used to be close to where I'm standing. Officials are warning the power outages will likely continue to expand. Meanwhile, there is no clear solution for how to stop this land from sliding. Jonathan Vigliotti, CBS News, Rancho Palos Verdes.
A New Hampshire man tests positive for 3 different illnesses spread by mosquitoes. That's next. A summer of heightened fears over mosquito-borne illnesses in New England has taken a frightening new turn. A 54-year-old father from New Hampshire is fighting for his life after testing positive for 3 different viruses. The man's family says he's been in the ICU on a ventilator for several weeks now. Doctors are not sure which virus is making him sick. Last week, a 41-year-old New Hampshire man died after an infection with Eastern equine encephalitis, a rare illness spread by mosquitoes. Eye on America is next with a visit to a tent revival and some battleground voters who want to fuse democracy and divinity to elect Donald Trump. For For the next 2 nights, we'll examine the overwhelming support Donald Trump gets from evangelical Christians. Last election, 84% of white evangelical Protestants voted for him. In tonight's Eye on America, Major Garrett looks at the fastest growing group of evangelicals in the U.S., charismatic Christians, and their strategy to tip a close election in favor of Trump.
In Eau Claire, Wisconsin, this summer, a tent revival attracted hundreds of charismatic Christians to receive revelation and wade into the gospel of Trumpism.
The Holy Spirit lives inside of you.
Tens of thousands joined online, all part of the so-called Courage Tour, a religious roadshow that is unapologetically political.
You can't make America great again until you restore an awakening with God again.
The goal? Motivate fellow charismatic Christians, many of whom don't belong to a formal church structure but find God in wonders and miracles, to evangelize for Donald Trump all the way to November.
We believe it's time to release the roar of Christian voters across America.
Joshua Standifer is part of the Courage Tour.
Do you mean Christian voters or do you mean pro-Trump Christian voters?
It's all the above.
It sounds to me like most of this messaging is pro-Trump.
You are literally seeing two sets of values and worldviews on display. And it just so happens one naturally aligns more to what we believe.
In Trump, evangelicals don't see an abrasive, thrice-married billionaire. They do see an anti-establishment leader strong on abortion, gender issues, and Israel.
I want people to vote because he stands for something.
Brother and sister attendees Jackie Brokaw and David Jansen.
2020 is a fraud, and everybody knows it.
The number of Christians that are in this area, if they would vote, they could swing this county, which would probably swing the rest of the state.
The Courage Tour targets key counties in battleground states, including places where Trump lost narrowly in 2020. In addition to voter mobilization, organizers want charismatic Christians as poll watchers and workers.
What we are seeing here today is the most targeted and tactical voter mobilization effort done by Christian nationalists ever.
Matthew Taylor has written extensively about this new form of religious activism that fuses political outcomes with divine intervention.
What is the political import, possibly, in the 2024 election of events like this?
Well, if Trump wins, then that becomes a part of the impetus that Donald Trump can say, I don't just have a democratic mandate, I have a divine mandate to change the country in accordance with the biblical values that these folks claim to have.
You won't have to vote anymore, my beautiful Christians.
Trump's election denialism electrified and galvanized charismatics online for weeks leading up to the January 6th Capitol riot.
January 6th was not an insurrection, it was an election fraud intervention.
Many of the people who were leaders in this movement also showed up on January 6th because they really believed that the election was being stolen.
As part of our visit to Eau Claire, we spoke with Lance Wallnau, a Courage Tour leader who rarely gives interviews about why he views Trump as anointed by God.
Pray for me, because I'm going to try to talk to some media folks that are here.
Tomorrow, we will hear from Wallnau on how Trump, a twice-divorced man with felony convictions, can maintain such a hold on charismatic Christians. For Eye on America, I'm Major Garrett in Eau Claire, Wisconsin.
In just a moment, we will remember the life and career of former teen idol James Darren. That's next.
If you can't watch the CBS Evening News, you can listen. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
Tonight, fans are mourning the death of longtime actor, director, and singer James Darren. The former teen idol first grabbed the nation's attention in the movie Gidget, opposite Sandra Dee.
There's no such thing as the next best thing to love.
His 14 albums included the 1961 hit single Goodbye Cruel World, which reached #3 on the Billboard charts. He guest starred on shows in the 70s and 80s like Charlie's Angels, Hawaii Five-0, and The Love Boat, before becoming a regular on the series T.J. Hooker. He also had stints behind the camera as a director for shows like Beverly Hills 90210 and Melrose Place. James Darren died in Los Angeles on Monday. He was 88 years old. And that is tonight's CBS Evening News. For Nora O'Donnell, I'm Maurice Dubois. Good night.